Meanwhile, it's day 3 of the so-called Black Swan murder trial. Former ballerina Ashley Benefield is accused of murdering her estranged husband. Yesterday, jurors heard testimony from critical eyewitnesses who detailed a roller coaster relationship. ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmire joins me now for more on this. Brian, what can we expect to happen in court today?
Well, Diane, as you said, yesterday was day 3, so today being the 4th day, we're hearing that the prosecution may actually wrap up in their case in chief. And so while you've heard many family members, experts, and law enforcement talk about this tumultuous relationship, we're probably going to end off hearing with a firearm expert, because this is a gun case, as well as a medical examiner telling us what would have been the bullet that killed the victim in this case, but also how many times he was shot and trying to negate any arguments of self-defense.
Now, Brian, the prosecution says just days before the shooting, Benefield's husband thought the two were trying to make it work. But she says she was trapped in an abusive relationship and that it reached a tipping point when he attacked her at her mother's home. That's her claim. And that's when she says she shot him multiple times in self-defense. Now, based on the evidence presented so far, how strong is the defense's argument here? Do you think it's enough to raise reasonable doubt?
So I think the defense needs a little bit more, and I think that's going to come from their case in chief when they put on their witnesses. But when I think about the evaluation as to whether or not a self-defense claim is strong, I think it's best to look at it in the lens that the law tells us we're supposed to. The prosecution has the burden of proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt. This is not a true he said, she said, where both sides are evaluated evenly. The defense has no burden here. Then when you claim self-defense as a defense attorney or a client, the prosecution has to disprove self-defense. And when you're making the argument that this was a battered woman that has IPV or battered woman syndrome, that's a large hurdle to overcome, especially with facts like this, where she's saying, I'm trying to hide the abuse and save myself and a child. It's reasonable. It could raise reasonable doubt. Just got to see if the facts align with it.
And, Brian, yesterday jurors heard key testimony from Benefield's mother, a close friend who's also a licensed social worker and a detective. Do you expect Benefield herself to take the stand here in her defense?
Absolutely. In a case where so much of the facts occurred inside of her home, where only she is a witness, and the defense has already raised these issues as to how Doug Benefield, the victim in this case, took a fighting stance before he was ultimately shot. Those facts can only come from the witness, or sorry, the defendant herself. And I think that not only will she testify, but also we're expecting an expert to testify about battered spousal syndrome, where they're explaining why her mind might have been in a fight or flight situation based on the abuse that she's alleged was at the hands of her late husband.
All right, Brian Buckmire, we'll be watching that case closely. Thank you.
My pleasure.